Uh-oh. We are good.
Awesome, great. So I am, chairwoman of the Special Committee on Environmental Resiliency, calling our regular Thursday, February 27th meeting order at 5:33. Can you please call the roll?
Chair Angela,
Present.
Vice Chair Sanchez,
Present.
Councilwoman Anthony,
Present.
Councilman Espinal is absent, Councilor Roy is absent. We have 3 present and 2 absent. We have a quorum.
Awesome, thank you so much. We're gonna take this out of order so we can hear, from, Councilman Ryan first. Can I have a motion to hear item 2 first?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please read item 2 into the record?
An ordinance amending chapter 12, Health and Sanitation, Article 3, Garbage, Trash, and Refuse, section 12 through 46, definitions, section 12 through 57, littering, and section 12 through 80, violations and penalties of the Providence Code of Ordinances.
Awesome. Councilwoman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the courtesy, and council colleagues, thank you for allowing me to go first. This ordinance is, this change in ordinance is rather straightforward. It's about litter, and it's intended, obviously, to reduce littering in our city, which is good for us all. Essentially, what it does is moves the fine for littering from $50 to $100. Worked with Miguel Young on this in the council policy office. And we felt that 100 was more of a deterrent than the $50 fine. Not that we collect a lot of dollars on in this arena, but it just speaks to our desire to have this reduce littering. Also, notably, is creating a littering fine that never existed relative to watershed areas. Obviously, littering in the watershed area is problematic on so many fronts, but it really does negatively impact our environmental locations. So that's the reason for a heftier fine. $250 is what we propose, and that is essentially all this does. So bumping up the existing fine 50 to 100 and creating a littering in a watershed fine, and it's significant, $250, but it is commensurate with the negative impact that it does have, littering does have in our watershed areas.
Any questions?
No, I'm just gonna say thank you so much for this clarification in this amendment. And particularly in my mind, the adding of section G, saying that, I live near the sea pump, and, you know, we have a lot of trash
Yeah.
down there, and people just throw it right out of their cars, and I think that, you know, if we catch them, that this is gonna be significant and will go a long way to stop that. So thank you.
Hopefully so.
Any questions?
Yes, just to confirm, who's authorized to issue these fines? Environmental?
I think it's both. I am not sure on that. I'll check, but I know that the police can,
They can't.
but typically environmental as well.
That's right. Do you know, just on top of your mind, how many littering tickets?
We don't have a law. We don't. We should have more. It's particularly problematic in the watershed areas. That's kind of the root of why I started looking at this. And then when we realized that the littering fee was only $50, we said, well, that seems, and it's been that way for many years. So time to rethink that and try it. And if it's not right, we'll change it again. But I think it's a step in the right direction, addressing a littering problem that we have, particularly in our watershed areas. I drive down past the waterway every day, and it amazes me how many people just throw cups and things out the window. It's, you know, it needs to stop, and I think expressing a significant fine will get people's attention.
Awesome. Well, I agree 100%. And I live right along and it's very good to hear something to the traffic in particular. Tons and tons of refuse from in there. It's a real problem. So if we pass this tonight, it can be then on our council agenda for Thursday next week. So if folks are comfortable, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Anthony, second by Vice Chair Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I get so used to voting after all these years.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Madam Clerk, thank you.
You're welcome. So that we can just really focus on the presentation, I would love if we could take item 3, because that would take about 30 seconds. Can someone-
So moved.
Second.
Awesome. Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We item 3 into the record, please.
The following item will be continued indefinitely. An ordinance amending chapter 23, streets, sidewalks, and public places of the Providence Code of Ordinances to add Article 9, electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
Awesome. So I will just mention, so this was sponsored by Councilman Gonzalez. He has since replaced it with a resolution reflecting the work that the Office of Sustainability is doing on EV adoption. And so this ordinance is no longer in play.
Motion to continue indefinitely.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, that is done. So now we'll move to item 1. I will say we will take public comment after the presentation as well. I didn't put it in the agenda bar, so I hope that's okay. Cool. Can we read item number 1 is the agenda?
Presentation by PVD Street Team, presentation by Kathy Darringer.
Awesome, so I'm really excited that we're gonna have a presentation about PVD tree plan, and we're joined by the team for PMPP, the Providence Neighborhood Planning Project. And Kathy and Morgan, and Tomei, I think are gonna present, so if you guys want to come on up, and Claire has your presentation on screen, and we all have copies. And for folks who are here who are not on the committee, their physical copies are there if you do better with physical copies. And don't feel awkward about it, totally just feel free to go on and grab copies, yeah.
Cool. So thank you all so much for letting us come and share a little bit about plans.
Yeah, thank you, seeing for you guys. I usually do more with you guys, I don't know, I think I'm a little tired, but I'm really excited about the street plans. And they're gonna describe it, we'll have a lot of time for answer, and I'll let you guys take it away, but excellent partners, have been partners with the city for a long time.
So I'll just speak quickly and do part of that. So get that ready. So I'm Cassie Theringer. I'm the executive director of Providence Neighborhood Planting Program. And that is a nonprofit that for 35 years almost has partnered with the city, specifically the forestry division, the Parks Department, to plant street trees around the city in partnership with neighbors and community groups and schools and faith centers and all sorts of entities. But PNPP is just one of many. So we, the 3 of us here, are representing PNPP because it's our job to do that part of our job. But we're talking about the tree plan, which is many partner collaboration. So we're PNPP, but we're talking about this broader project. And I know I represented Elmwood and
Thank you so much for taking time today to listen to us talk about trees. I'm Jordan. I am the director of operations and urban forest coordination for PNPP.
Hey everyone, my name is Tony Gade-Irvin. I'm a resident of the West End over Wood Street. I've lived in Providence for 10-15 years, but my grandpa was born in the Roger Williams project, step-grandpa, and my stepmom grew up on Bridgeland Street, and I've kind of went to URI, lived in between here and with a bunch of other places, and I'm a professional arborist, and that is the role that I kind of stepped into doing stuff in Providence. I was working for a tree company doing work traveling around, and I was like, gee, hey, I'd love to not have a commute, but also I'm an invested community member and wanna, figure out how I can plug in, and I ended up becoming a member of the PVD Tree Steering Committee, and eventually, also started working for PMPP, part-time a couple years ago, and last month, I went to full-time. Seems like it's been longer. I was like working up to it, but yeah, I'm probably, yes, I'm gonna be talking a little bit first. So just digging into it, I'm an arborist, I'm a tree guy, also, just dedicated community member, but, the trees in Providence are not distributed equitably. There's a lot of reasons for this. Providence is a very old city, it's built on like old, indigenous infrastructure that was there, like different trade routes, and was centered around this waterway that used to be this like teeming bed of like a grocery store, a highway, only one. And then came in like the era of kind of, colonial settling, we kind of developed this city at a time when we weren't really practicing planting trees on the street, in the way that we do now. And, the Industrial Revolution came in, and, huge areas of Providence are industrial. And also there's, a history of redlining, so there's, as you can see here, there's a series of maps, and they kind of show that connection of like what the urban forest looks like in terms of our tree distribution. Darker green are areas that are what we would consider to be like well treed, they've got shade, you can feel the presence of trees. And then areas that are increasingly more beige, or areas where there's just like lots of hardscape, there's things like heat islands that increased temperatures, because, things like concrete absorb heat and then release it slowly, over the evening, even like well past the sun setting. Some of the redlining that was outlined, like redlining communities are areas that didn't historically get some of the same benefits that other communities did, in terms of money, assistance, care, and then right in these absences of where there are gaps in our urban forests, where there aren't very many trees, there's also these correlations to things like who lives there. They're the people who don't get to benefit from trees right outside their door tend to be people who suffer from things like asthma. Maybe they don't make as much money as some of the people who live in these well-treated areas, and they also tend to be communities of color. I 100% have asthma and live in, I don't, historically have made a ton of money. Not that I do now either, but, and I also am Cuban and Apache. So it's not particularly surprising that I ended up where I did, and where my family has historically lived. And so talking maybe a little more closer, zooming in, why trees? Trees are really important. Well, like some of those maps just showed you, there are some real correlations between our health, what we experience like on the street, and just like, how we feel around trees. Trees make us improve our health in like a lot of different ways. They filter out our air, they help sequester our stormwater when it rains for 30 minutes and then they shut down the highway. It also, trees can do things like if you put your like air conditioning unit in where there is like shade from a tree, you will save so much money while you're trying to heat or cool your home. So there are just all of these things that like maybe we didn't certainly plan for it historically over the past few centuries, but we have learned the hard way that trees are incredibly, incredibly important, and every single tree, whether it's on public land, private land, DOT right of way, they all comprise our urban forest, and these things all connect to each other. And just when I talk about the urban forest of Providence, like I don't just even mean Providence, it kind of extends past because, different invasives will come up through different areas. So, trees don't necessarily have the same concepts of like parceling and boundaries that we do. Cool, so, you know, there's all these pre-existing problems in Providence and stuff with the trees, and we noticed, right? There's all these different entities, different nonprofits, different, branches of the municipal government and stuff that have noticed this over the years, and so we've all kind of come together in this collaborative effort to say, well, you know, we have these problems that we'd love to work on and solve in different ways, especially like with community, like involved, not just like people in a room making decisions, although sometimes that is what happens. You know, but we wanna also, you know, have an opportunity for the community to let us know like how they really feel. So we started kind of, all these different stakeholders came together, and a few years ago, the PVD tree plan was established. At some point, somebody talked to me and I managed to get into one of the steering committee meetings. What is the thinking of like? You know, there was kind of this developmental stage where like, you know, we're kind of collecting ourselves together, becoming the steering committee, and then we went through this huge process where we got, some folks together and really kind of started hashing it out. We decided to do a community survey, which we got like, you know, which I think we're gonna talk about in a minute. You know, we tried to be present at different city events. We had like a launch at, High School 360 in JSEC, where BNPP had traditionally planted, a lot. Here's one of our meetings. I think the former city forester that still is in that one. That's exciting. And I think some of us even are somewhere. Yeah, that's me. And we had, you know, so it was really collaborative. We had the city forester, we had people from PNPP. At that point, I was just a random individual living Batsted. Anything more? But yeah, I think one people were kind of community survey.
Yeah, so the creation of the PVD tree plan itself took years, literally, starting around 2020, and we released it at the very end of 2023. And throughout those years, and still, it really hasn't ended with the release of the plan. And that's intentional. We've been out talking to people and trying to learn more because people's priorities, needs, challenges are always shifting. The community survey that Tony mentioned is just one of the ways that, one of the strategies we use to try to learn about what people think. It definitely wasn't the only one, but it's worth zeroing in on some of the things that people said in it. So we got 848 responses to that survey, and 59% of those responses were from people who are living in high priority neighborhoods. So those neighborhoods that on the maps that we saw earlier are in that pattern of low tree canopy, high heat, experiencing, really bearing the brunt of the impacts of this absence of trees in the landscape. And also 20% of the survey responses were in Spanish. So, and of all of these hundreds of people that weighed in, we found that only 1.5% of residents believe that their neighborhoods have enough trees. And over 98% of residents think we should increase investment in Providence's trees. So that's a pretty resounding sort of statement there. And also there were opportunities for public input, comments. We documented all sorts of conversations that we were having at tabling events, community presentations, and in a sec, I'm going to talk through some of the themes that were really recurring over and over again that we kept hearing. So a big one to emphasize is that people have relationships with trees where they live, no matter how many trees there are. People notice them and relate to them in all sorts of different ways, and value them. Another big thing, it also doesn't go unnoticed that the patterns that we've been talking about. the inequities that are citywide, that are so highly racialized across Providence. You don't need to look at those maps to know that. Anyone who has walked around Providence, who has lived in one of the sort of hot red spots on the map, knows this very well. And people register that. Another thing that we really is an important thing that's tied to this sort of historic lack of investment in our green infrastructure and in our trees is that trees can cause problems. And that also affects people's relationship with trees. They can cause damage. Well, I'll talk about this more in a sec, but yeah, people feel the negative effects that happen when trees are not maintained and invested in as sort of valued parts of our landscape. And also people are ready to jump in and help our trees thrive. But also, and this is really important, need support in doing that. Like taking care of trees is a lot of work. It's very, it's easy to believe. We want to believe that all you have to do is sort of plant a tree in the ground and walk away, and that's not how it works. It's hard to be a tree in the city, and they need a lot of care. They need us to be good neighbors to them. And that requires time, that requires money. That's a big reason why there are so many more healthy trees in our wealthier neighborhoods, because people have more time and resources available to take care of the trees that are there. So a really important part of this plan is making sure that trees can be cared for and people can be supported in caring for trees all across the city. Go ahead.
That reminded me in that previous, we talked about how many people want to invest resources in trees. I think we've been said in a survey that wasn't just in planting new trees. We framed that as an investment in caring for trees, addressing problems trees cause, supporting people and programs and working with trees. So it's very much, it's not weird. Also, the tree plan approach is not just, we just need more trees, blah, 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 and then everything will be solved. It's no, there's a lot then that we have to be really addressing. The problems trees can cause, and with infrastructure or with,
And there are opportunities there too for trees and people to sort of thrive together. People are interested in learning the skills they need to take care of trees, to learn about pruning, to learn about tree maintenance and tree care. And there are green career opportunities in that work that we're really excited to be sort of fostering and strengthening so that people have access to those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that I always tell folks is that planting a tree is like starting a relationship. It's not like the end goal. And one of the wonderful and beautiful things about trees is that it's really crucial to not just plant them, but to keep them alive. Because as they grow, as they mature, the benefits that we feel from trees grow not just like in a direct correlation, but like exponentially. So it's not just about even planting new trees, but keeping our old and aging trees comfortable, alive, and addressing those real infrastructure problems that occur when trees age and when, like we always have to deal with like the past choices that people have made. I'm sure that's like a feeling that not only I feel in trees, but other people feel everywhere. And sometimes there are places that I look and go, wow, I don't know if a tree this size is ever gonna get planted there again. And it's a great opportunity to keep trees like that alive because we have limited options for things like very narrow sidewalks. We have to think about creative solutions for keeping our trees alive and also dealing with those issues.
I think one way that even when you just are talking about the strict dollars and cents of it all, trees are the only type of infrastructure that actually increase in value over time rather than depreciating. So it's an investment, even in the most like literal sense, in the future, which is all that more important under conditions of climate change where heat resilience and flood reduction are going to become increasingly important very quickly and already have. So just want to zero in again on this point, which we've talked to, spoken about a bit, as Cassie said, the goal of the tree plan is not to say la, 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 more trees, no matter what, trees never cause problems. It's actually to talk to people about the problems they experience related to trees and find ways to address those problems so that we can maximize the benefits that they're offering and minimize the challenges. And so a lot of the recommendations at the heart of the PPD tree plan are getting at some of these stickier issues. And our plan outlines strategies to address them, including preventative maintenance, especially there are sort of early stage, low cost interventions you can make, like structural pruning for young trees that can help prevent them from becoming sort of hazards in the future down the line. And a couple of really big ones also are coordination across the city among all the different practitioners and entities that engage in planting to make sure that everyone is following best practices for like site selection, species selection, adopting right tree, right place guidelines, which are a really important part of preventing these kinds of tree root, sidewalk heaving and conflict with electrical wires. We've learned a lot over the years in urban forestry about how to strategically plant trees so that they don't cause these problems. And unfortunately, the people who are planting trees 60, 70 years ago didn't know those things or didn't care. But the good news is now we do, and we just need to make sure that everyone is sort of on the same page there. And also we have in the Department of New Knowledge that we have access to now, there are really exciting developments at play in terms of new types of engineering solutions that can help reduce all of the conflicts that happen between tree roots and sidewalks and help us have big, mature, strong shade trees and also navigable, accessible sidewalks, both of which are important for residents. And so in the tree plan, we present a whole lot of recommendations for how we can concretely be taking action together and move towards this citywide vision of real tree equity. And we recognize also that these recommendations, the action has to be across all of these different areas for it really to be effective. And so we make recommendations related to tree planting, related to maintenance and management, as well as workforce development, policy and planning, funding and financing, and community leadership and engagement, which is also a really important pillar of the tree plan that urban forest management in Providence continues to be as democratic and sort of locally controlled as possible. The residents can make choices about what happens to trees and what happens to infrastructure where they live in their neighborhoods. And also, as we were developing all of these recommendations of the steering committee, talking to community members, there were really three overarching themes that were emerging over and over and over again, which is that we need coordination across all of the different, many organizations and businesses and people across the city whose work touches urban forestry. We need capacity building for the organizations, the very scrappy little guys that are doing this work. And we need structures to facilitate community leadership and real authentic sort of community ownership of these processes.
And realizing we didn't put it in here, but another kind of core recommendation of the plan was to set a goal or a vision of planting an additional 30,000-ish trees over the next decade, focused in tree equity focus areas. That was also which are, oh yeah, in the handout, there's little maps of those tree equity focus areas, and that's well maintaining the canopy level in the non-tree equity. So that doesn't mean we can stop, take our eye off the ball in every part of the city. Just means we have to plant even more, etc. Keeping the level. But yeah, so there's, as like Jordan or Tony said earlier, the tree plan was never, the kind of goal from the outset was never to kind of be a document that just sits on a shelf or is referred to in random texts occasionally, but to have it be an ongoing process of collaboration and coordination. And so, and sort of some examples of that, you know, these, I'm gonna just run through a few of the types of things that we are already, many of us, not just in P, but many of the partners who are involved in it have been starting to dig our teeth into as part of the tree plan, and that's sort of, we see that all as being part of the tree plan framework. Piloting new, Jordan touched on this, but sidewalk and tree conflict is, I'm sure city councilors are familiar with from your constituents, the issues that raises. Until I had a kid a few years ago and was like really out there with the stroller. It was, I mean, I always knew it. It was, oh, yeah, wow. I can't even get my stroller over that even sidewalk. That's not always for the tree roots, but you know. So we have been working with folks in the mayor's office and Sheila and other people on some piloting solutions for addressing some of those conflicts so that we can, as Renee said, not just chop that shouldn't be a Sophie's choice of, well, chop the tree down or we fix the sidewalk. What are there are solutions out there? There's all sorts of fancy engineering things you can do and, you know, creative solutions. So piloting some of those around the city to show and demonstrate and get funding for rolling out at scale. Building ways for at the neighborhood level and citywide community leadership and kind of decision making. We have hopefully federal funding freeze, unfreeze pending for various uses. We have a bunch of projects that will help create some real community. And I think again, city councilors will be talking to you all about how you can support at the neighborhood level and kind of really what do people need in that, you know, in this pocket of the ward, or where do we need more trees? Where do we, you know, these trees are neglected, that type of decision making. Tree ambassador, kind of outreach liaisons. There's a lot to do there. We've been doing a lot of focusing on community hubs, youth community serving community hubs, rec centers, and schools. It's a key place to get shade and also a great way to reach families and community members to talk about trees and spread awareness of resources. We've been doing some food tree. That was a huge thing we heard in the tree plan over and over again. If people want more community orchards and fruit trees, we did not plant fruit trees on the street. That is causes all sorts of problems and makes lots of people unhappy, but that does not mean there are not many places in the city that we can be adding orchards and fruit forests. Finding, piloting some things right now to figure out how well we're going and planting a tree, do we plant other things with pollinator habitat and understory plantings and companion planting. One thing I want to just highlight, because I think commercial corridors are always there where we have a lot of infrastructure and buildings and competing usage, and also often end up falling at the boundary of ward lines or neighborhood lines, and so sometimes get like short shrift in the trees too, and so there's a neat project that some of your colleagues in wards 9, 10, and 11 kind of pulled some of their funds to do some real investment in the trees along Broad Street. I'm excited to see how that could be extrapolated maybe in other parts of the city. And so now to how the city council can help support this. I think we feel really fortunate, first of all, just to have a city council in our city in this moment who is kind of so proactive on some of these issues of rural justice or climate resilience or community, you know, trees. We have trees that we have city councilors out at our tree plantings in ways for the last few years. That is exciting to see and new in my opinion. One really kind of simple but powerful thing, I think, would be having the city council as a body endorse or show support as a resolution, or I don't know the exact appropriate ways that that might work, but just kind of saying, yes, this is work we think. I mean, the tree plan is already embedded in the comp plan. I know you know, I think you're familiar with it and seeing it there. And, you know, many parts of the city and its, divisions and groups have been involved in it, so this is already sort of a city project, but just having the council, kind of show, especially as we look to leverage funding and kind of continued support for a lot of the, work of implementing the plan's recommendations, it will be powerful to be able to say, yes, we have city behind this work. Another area that we won't go into tonight at all, but there will be, some opportunities to do some policy ordinance tweaking. In the coming year or so, we have in the short term had many and continue to have conversations with planning and inspections and standards, Alexis and Bob, and kind of talking about some of, you know, some of the different issues, and a lot of it is just about capacity, and a lot of it's, there's a lot there. But that's something we would really look forward to coming to you all as city councilors and as a body to, when the time has come, to kind of talk through and we can come up with some ordinance and zoning additions that I think could strengthen our tree canopy and eliminate problems with it. And then another thing in this moment of, you know, heading into the budget season, and there's a lot of it's a fraught time right now at many levels on the budget front, although it always is. But so, you know, PNPP is not officially the forestry division, we're not 501c3, but none of the work that all of the collaborators and nonprofits do is possible without also having sort of resourced forestry division to support that. And we're really lucky that we have a forestry division, one that has been investing in planting for so many years, where many a lot of cities of our size are, you know, envious that, wow, you have a steady commitment, you know, to match the PNPP planting. That's a huge start. And so we just urge you to, you know, keep at the forefront. It's critical community infrastructure and all that our forestry division can do to support it. And then I think there's just a lot of small ways that we already do partner with many city councilors, as, you know, organizing tree plantings and awards. One thing we've been doing, a few that have popped up in a few different places around the city, is city councilors putting some funds towards watering young trees, because the PNPP can provide the trees free through that match, but we can't always, you know, there's a neighborhood where it's maybe low home ownership and people can't water the tree themselves, or it's a commercial corridor and it's an industrial stretch, and we need additional watering support to be able to put money into watering those trees. It's really much, I know that Ward 3 has done some of that, and other wards are doing that. So we've been investing in some tree mulching and care, I know. So, and then, yeah, again, as we start to roll out some of these community tree forum and neighborhood level work, just having you all as sort of, you're the ones hearing constituents all the time and being, you know, connecting them to us to get free trees, or, you know, learn more about what's going on. Yeah, we're always here, and I think that's it. That's the very high level summary. It's a very long plan. You are free to read it all, or the executive summary. But
Awesome, yeah, so I'll kick off and just say, these quick things, but then you guys can questions. One was, which I meant to say at the onset, was that this is the first, you guys know this, the first of a series of presentations we're gonna have at this committee on like important issues facing the city, that either we likely would like to act on, or are gonna update us on policies we've already passed. So like next month we'll hear about building decarb and benchmarking, where that's going, and also Vision Zero. There's a couple of these coming up, so I'll do this for the public notes, there'll be more. But I was really excited about this. I have a couple questions, but I'm gonna let Councilman Anthony and Sanchez and Councilman Sanchez ask any questions they have first. I correct myself. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, start. The street planting program that I think Park and Rec, does our Parks and Rec sponsor that, where they have said to neighborhoods, you know, if you can get a certain number of people together, you know, you can have street trees.
That's us, that's PNPP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are doing, explain that.
But it is a 50, so
Yeah, explain that.
35 years ago, there was a Peggy Sharp was a,
Yes.
woman who, just passed away recently. When her mother-in-law, Mary Elizabeth Sharp, passed away in honor of her, who had been a champion of trees and street trees, and they had been observing how much Providence's street tree population was declining and not being replaced. And so her thought was, well, I'm gonna go around and put in a bunch of money and raise a bunch of money from people I know, and then come to the city and say, hey, if we create this endowment to plant street trees in Providence, will you match it? 50 dollar for dollar, and we'll work collaboratively to implement it and coordinate it. And then the third partner in that will be community member, I think from the, and this is really ahead of its time. I think that, you know, this idea of both the partnering, the public-private partnership, if you will, and the resident involvement. The other idea was that instead of just coming in and saying, and we need trees here, and we need trees here, and we need trees here, having residents have a say in where the trees were and saying, well, I want a tree on my block and I want to take care of it and water it and keep an eye on it and learn about it. And so that essentially has been going on for 35 years. And we have a office in the forest, you know, we're sort of embedded in the forestry office, and so I've worked closely with Doug and then AJ and now Sam to do these plantings.
And has it been successful? I mean, I'm just wondering how, you know, do you have an idea of how many trees have been planted?
So
as a result
this
of
is
that?
what we do, and this is when we first did an update to the street tree inventory. That was one of the early steps of the tree plan, was redoing the tree canopy assessment and redoing the street tree inventory. And in both of those, in Providence, we went up slightly, very slightly, but up slightly, and that is bucking the trend of every other comparable city around, just in net increase. And in particular, we say this because we are so, to us, the community input was the most important, but we did also have like a national urban forest planning expert who did a whole stage of the, you know, came in and made his official rec. Continue to mention that, but he did his whole official sort of assessment of, and one thing he really noted was the fact that our street tree inventory citywide had gone up slightly, was like, wow. And then he said, well, oh, it's because, and, you know, he dug in, it's because you have this program where the city and nonprofits have been just doggedly, that
And also.
did not address disparity where, you know, those were the overall.
Yeah.
But still,
And so in Providence, our last comprehensive street tree inventory was in 2017, but at that point we had about 27,000 street trees in the city. It's estimated that trees in the city, we have over 400,000.
Mhm.
So street trees are really visible, but they actually only account for a very small percent of all the trees in the city. And of the space where there's opportunity to plant, very little of that is in the right. We're doing everything we can to take advantage of the remaining space in the right of way and the sidewalks.
and schools and
And
parks
schools,
and other city
right.
owned property.
But that's part of a huge goal of the tree plan, is to find new mechanisms to support tree planting and increases in tree canopy in some of these areas that have been tougher to craft on private property, as well as on sort of non-right of way, non-sidewalk public property.
Do you mind if I have another
Yeah,
question?
yeah, of course.
I know that, the DIS, Department of Inspections and Standards, has done this, de-paving pilot over near Providence College. And, it's so interesting, like, it would be interesting, they've had some success, that's my understanding. And I'm just wondering if once the de-paving, the owners agree to de-pave, whether we might consider, planting free trees.
Yeah.
Or we might actually offer it, I never even thought of
Yeah, that's a
that.
great idea.
But, you know, if that pilot, we'll have to check in with, Director Moore and see how they've been doing with that, but, wouldn't it be interesting if we could, you know, de-pave, so they're after people who have overpaved, their properties. And, you know, are saying, hey, listen, you need to take that off. Don't you worry, we'll come in now and plant trees. Might be an interesting opportunity.
And we do that even informally in little ways through our model where often it's a church, it tends to be churches that where maybe they're out of compliance and we're doing a planting right there and we're like, hey, if you guys, it's private property, you know, if you guys can pave it though, it's along the right of way, we can give you trees so that you can come into compliance and we would. That ties to the ordinance stuff and how we could, zoning stuff, how we could make things that won't be punitive on the people who can support it, but will, you know,
It's a reward.
carrots and sticks, and we would love to like really nerd out with you all about that more next year. But we've been talking with GIS a bunch about that.
Good, good. And may I just ask, any state funding available for, do you have state funding or?
So we were really fortunate this spring to get a Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management tree equity grant, which is from the RGGI funds, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, to focus on supporting tree planting around schools in cities, Suffolk Street and Hartford this spring. But there has beyond that, I mean, a little bit.
I was trying
I got you.
I shut the PowerPoint off, but it stayed up there. I was trying to,
I
Close
just
the-
know what you do, so I wanted to make sure you do.
no, actually I didn't. There we go.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been a big source of, I think probably more of either PMPP or some of our partners like Groundwork and others who we protected, who we work with a lot. Skipped, it's either sort of federal grants or local, although State Department of Transportation is an area that I think there's more opportunity to try to pull it down some funding for some of the work here. And Alicia and WRDC have done a great job with that. I think there's more to do.
Great.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you guys for your very important work. I think it's super important to, you know, highlight the impact of the inequalities that have been impacting the neighborhoods for so long, and more importantly, addressing those. So definitely here to support, invest. I'm super interested if there's any ordinances, please bring them to us. We're definitely happy to put those forward.
I have two questions, and then, actually 3 questions. One is logistical. Are you open to questions from the public, or would you prefer them to make public comment? So it's.
Fine.
Okay. And then, should have asked ahead of time, is the thing I should have done. I'm sorry. I have 2 questions though. One is, so if we're gonna do hopefully 30,000 trees in the next 10 years, how many trees are we currently planting per year, roughly?
So, and one thing to clarify when we say that 30,000 number, that is not like the city and PNPP.
That's like the
trees.
whole-
That's a goal for overall, the way, you know, developers
Oh, okay.
planting because of zoning ordinance, people planting in their
Yard.
backyard because of the future yard tree planting programs that we're gonna all launch in the coming year. So currently through just the city and PNPP's partnership, it's about 600 to 700 trees a year on average. And then Groundwork, especially in recent years with some funding, the Sims, you know, the Sims settlement funding has helped get more trees in South Providence. But we actually don't know. And it's hard to know, and this is another nut to crack, is how do we even know, it's hard to track how, if I go and plant a tree in my backyard, there's no reason you would necessarily know about it, so it's a little squishy about the track, but that was based on what seemed to be like feasible and realistic of a sort of 30,000 over 10 years, and also it's in the beginning set.
Ask one more question. When I've done the plantings in Ward 3, which might be Ward 3 does so much planting, and just to comment a couple of neighbors have brought up like making sure that like compost is added and stuff like that. Is that consistent across all of the, I know we have some more compost enthusiasts in our neighborhood who are just real pros, and we're so lucky to have them, they're just so wise, but is that consistent across the other plantings, or is that special because we have?
So for the spec for the city forestry is the division that kind of, it has determined the specifications and parameters for how each street tree gets planted, and, that is based on, a premise that the soil that is being put into each tree pit at the time of planting is at the appropriate ratio of, mix of kind of breakdowns. I think it can only ever, I mean, we won't go into the technical weeds of this, but you can't have it be too nitrogen heavy or too hot. That can actually cause too much young tree growth too fast, which can then lead to disease or weed stretch. So it's a whole,
Yeah.
but I think, well-aged compost, with good microbial presence can only help. But we don't have any kind of mechanism or program way of doing that. We've had enthusiasts who have been able to, like, through their own kind of sweat equity and willingness to, like, do that in little one-offs, but I think it would be great to think about how we could maybe make that a more mechanized thing. Goals, typical goals.
Also, we have no more committee questions. Does anyone in the public have comment or questions about what we discussed today? And if you could say your name for the record. With clarity, yeah.
Sure. My grandmother actually grew up in Bloomingdale, and one of the things that just blows my mind is that she grew up on farmland and she used to walk into Providence. So my question is, like, is part of this plan to kind of help bring trees back to areas that have been stripped so egregiously of trees? I mean, I live on the edge of Olneyville, and I often walk into Olneyville, and it is like, especially in the summertime, it is a brutal walk because there are no trees whatsoever. And so if you think about what that does for people who live in that community, it makes it a really tough place. And I mean, Olneyville isn't the only place, I'm just singling it out because, there was farmland there, and it's hard to even comprehend that because now it is so different. It's so urbanized and so much of a heat sink, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there are no, don't worry, there are no, like, sneaky recommendations to, like, get all the residents and buildings and businesses out and turn it over to forested land. But yes, I think focusing on, and there's so many competing, like, houses and sidewalks and cars and a lot of these, utility lines, like, we need to have these things, but we think that there are ways to have way more trees in the mix without, sacrificing or unduly burning those other things, and that those are in fact critical infrastructure. They're not just a nice to have, but they are increasingly really crucial to have.
And I do think it's helpful to think about it too in that framework, that it's defending something that has always been there, and that has been removed, and we're experiencing the consequences now.
Right, yeah, and I mean, I think we tend to also sometimes think that if an area is like this, then it always has to be like this. And so that's not true. So I do think, let's start to really dream and visualize of a different outcome. Or I mean, different, and again, I'm just singling out that area, but I mean, there's obviously a lot of areas that need that help. So.
Anyone else have comment? Greg, do you have any minute? Yeah.
Greg Barrett, I live on 6th Street. I've been following this project along for quite a while, and I'm really happy to see them finally go over to City Council, and I'm hoping the City Council does endorse it. It was interesting that the number of trees is about what we need for housing for the same number of people over the next 10 years to meet the need. So you might have to double that number of trees. But I mean, if the city is gonna meet other goals, it's probably gonna need housing for 30,000 people in the next 10 years, which is even more of a stretch than planting 30,000. If you don't mind, I'd like to make one comment on the thing that
Yeah, please, Greg.
Councilwoman Ryan. I have never in my entire life seen somebody get a ticket for littering. And I don't think that they give tickets for littering, except for the most egregious, obvious ones where somebody like throws a piece of trash at the policeman and the only thing you can charge him with is littering. But it just seems like raising the fines on littering, is gonna be hurting people that, the fine right now is too big. You know, and so I really wonder about the idea of raising fines on littering. Since one, we'll never enforce it, and two, if we do enforce it, the odds of enforcing it, you know, equitably are, slim to none. You know, I mean, so if, you know, I mean, I live along North Main Street, and North Main Street has a million nips. What you really need to do is, instead of raising the fines on littering, we need to stop making trash.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let's ban nips and, you know, let's ban plastics and, you know, and have a real recycling program that we don't have. So it's kind of like the government pushing the problem to the people who are least able to solve it. You know, and so it's kind of a contrast to doing what the tree plan's doing, which was, you know, real community involvement. I'm looking at something in the state right now, and they're talking about what to do about forests. But they didn't talk to any of the people who actually make a living in woods. And so, you know, we have to like be much more cognizant in the context of this. So a tree plan, good, you know, a litter plan that's basically putting all the weight of it on, the people who are suffering the most from the litter, not a good idea. So, I hope that that's useful.
Thanks, Greg. Anyone else have any comments?
Hi, my name's Jason. I'm a dietitian and I also do food policy consulting, both for improving food insecurity and also improving local food agriculture resiliency. Can I actually make a comment on that first?
Yeah, you can comment.
I was gonna mention, I guess, something similar. So to support that, are there any fines or ordinances built in towards the waste management companies? Because I've also lived around there in Ward 3, and anecdotally, having been there for almost 3 years, it does seem much more frequent that I see refuse flying out of either people's trash bins or the trucks, rather than in, you know, the kids from Hope High or the MLK elementary, like, you know, that sort of thing. So I wonder, in thinking or system thinking, rather than penalizing individuals who disproportionately wouldn't have the money, you know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's built into the waste management contract, but that's gonna come back up next
It
year,
is.
I think, or later this year, so that should definitely be something that's considered when that comes back
Is
up.
it?
If you could take a note of that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I did. I was just gonna say it also came up during the waste management commission, I believe. I didn't stop all of those meetings, but I know it was something that they were focused on, was figuring out ways to find the waste management, like, companies. So that we can have, like, you know, more that are, because of that. So,
Yes, they do a terrible job.
but I do know the other bit to figure out if we have.
That'd be awesome.
And that impact, and taking like trees, and then we can connect back to the trees in the fall, the leaves and the blocking storm drains with the track and through the moves. Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Say one thing on that.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think it's good that, I didn't mention it in this, but one of the things that, Groundwork, one of the key partners in this tree planting work, has recently launched in collaboration with us, and I don't like Garden Time, is a storm crew, which is, mimicking the canopy crew model that we have already had of people caring for young trees, and getting paid for it, or, you know, learn and earn and workforce training, but to do, storm drain clean out, and leaves, trash and leaves, and that's the thing. We often, leaves come up a lot. Some people are just like, they're messy, I don't want them, you know. So how can we haven't yet bred trees that don't have any leaves, but.
Yeah, and I did get that question recently.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but that plan to compost all of those leaves
Right.
would make a huge difference. You know, we really had a system in place to make sure that all the street tree leaves were being collected so we could compost, which would then use the compost for the tree, use the compost for garden. I mean, you know, you have to really start to think of life is round and big systems in order to actually tackle some of these. I mean, you gotta tackle them on an individual basis, but the big systems really make a difference.
Do you want to actually?
Oh, yeah, you know, the question.
Yeah. So On the note of farms that used to be in Providence and interdisciplinary work, has there been any research or investigation on your part or on the state into an agroforestry model? Thinking of, yeah, that's a good smile. So my master's program was about that, and then also thinking of the copious amounts of federal funding that we're all gonna be losing, the more that we can kind of put our heads together, and then you get access maybe to RIDO for the food nutrition support and RIDE for the vacation, so. I guess.
This is like I think both, like, Renee and I, this is the thing, we are like so eager to see more of and more coming to, we don't have any real formal programs, and I don't think it's from the state, there have been any studies that would be relevant to the urban, there have been some studies that in other states there have been, and we do have a couple really cool projects, doing some just community orchards, there was some funding through the Central Providence has, the participatory budgeting process, and fruit trees and food bearing trees was a top priority that was picked, and so PNP and some other partners are helping do a couple of community orchard food forest projects this year, and we have, I won't get your info and we should talk later because I think there's a huge amount of opportunity and there's so many great models out there, and we have Candace, our former colleague, spent a while just researching a lot of those and kind of compiling them, and I think there's a lot of opportunity with that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ken.
Yeah, as an Indigenous person, like I was definitely raised like with the idea that like you not only have like tried to invest time and foster a relationship with the other like living beings, including plants that you're around to eat your own food, but also that, you know, this is something that we used to kind of like large scale plan for in the way that we set up our forests and like our lands. And that's something that has been absent in our landscape for a while in Providence. And once again, it's like probably something that we not just need to establish for the first time, but bring back. And one of the things, you know, we don't have like a full plan about how to do that and all the funding to do it in this moment. One of the things that we're planning for the future is like getting some like really small seedlings to do a distributed nursery for, and some of the plants that we're getting for that are things that we don't usually get from our normal nursery person who's not usually like a big like fruit nurseries, or getting things like different types of nuts, like and persimmon maybe, and everything, I think across the board, what we always hear is where can we put fruit trees? Where can we turn this empty lot into a food forest? And like, and the want and the need is so unbelievably there. And yeah, we need to.
People are hungry for it.
Literally hungry.
And we have these forests, you know, like Neighbor Covenant and Blackstone Woods, and we have areas where you could really do some cool, you know, more agro, you know, across the line from community orchard to.
About the butternut forest. There's a butternut forest over at the Wild Place.
I only know about it because of you.
And they were there when I first went there, and there's still no way to do them around that area. You know, they're falling down eventually, but there's still like 8 or 10 butternut trees there.
I don't know, we should do a lesson.
If you go from the nuts, there's tons of nuts everywhere.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, to open up a butternut, you basically need a sledgehammer.
Is it good tasting?
It tastes very good, but it just. You have one point. But they're much harder to open than walnuts.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever had it.
I worked on a farm up in Maine that had like one butternut tree, but then every once in a while I grab one over at the Wild Place, and I managed to open a few of them and eat a little bit, but it's. You really need a machine.
Connect it with some of our, I don't know, well, like heavy machinery, steel yard, or. Metal fabrication, like, you know, whole cottage industry for that. It's good tractor.
Yeah.
That gavel will break.
Yeah, not with this, something else, yeah. Any other questions or public comment? Also, oh, Kelly.
I have a question for you, for Madam Chair. Are we going to have a draft resolution done so that we can endorse?
I think we can. I think
Yeah.
that's the, I asked them when they did the presentation to make recommendations of things we could do to help, so.
Let me
It'd be
know.
great for us to follow up. Yeah,
We-
might
we
work on
do
that.
that?
I know, so I was just waiting for you to ask me right now.
Oh, yes, okay, we were asking.
We're asking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
so
know
that-
if you let them.
So that we can, get this to council. I don't know if we'll have to have it come back and we'll review it.
No, I think we could
without
just have
that.
it, yeah, go through, I imagine, since we already talked about this here.
Do we have to vote on it or? should
You
we-
just introduce it and have.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, for committee, actually.
For
yeah,
Yeah,
for committee.
I think we could just have. Once Trevor writes it, so one of us.
Well, if we need a motion,
I don't think we need a motion, yes, for to write it.
I don't think so.
and then does it have to come back here or can it go
I
right to
think we could
council?
just have to go right to council.
Do
Okay,
you want it for next week or?
no, if we can, I mean, I can't imagine that we're gonna have anything but a positive recommendation coming out here. Do we need to see it? Before we go?
I can get started after dinner tonight. Can I go home?
Oh, you're tomorrow? No. I'm not, we're not asking for it to be rough. I just want to make sure that we're taking action on it.
Of course.
And we're happy if there are, further questions or that the whole council wants to, more of that,
Maybe you should see a copy of our resolution too, since.
Oh, yeah, so
I'll give you my card. Do you guys have any kind of draft language already or no? If you don't, totally fine.
For resolution.
No, okay, that's fine. I'll get your contact info and we can.
yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
It doesn't have to be for next meeting, it can be like.
No,
Pretty much. Cool. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, can I have a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Excellent.
Thank you so much, really.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, that's all.
Are you?